Hey, what's up, all you art geeks out there? Today, we are going to talk all about me, yours truly. I have a bunch of questions that I get asked all the time through Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. When we have open studio night in my building every first Friday of the month, our building is open to the public. I get asked questions all the time about my practice, about what influences me, just random questions about my oil paintings in general. So, we're going to talk about me today. And hopefully, this will just give you a bit more of an insight into me as an artist, into me as a person. But before we get into any of this, I just want to quickly mention that the video we're watching is a tutorial over on my Patreon page. So check that out if you want to learn more about oil painting, especially portrait painting. I also have art downloads and some other things on there. So check it out. You will definitely get something out of it for sure. So let's go ahead and get back to talking about me. What a boring subject, talking about me, but we're going to do it. Hopefully, I don't bore you too much about all the little things that make me tick, but I have a list here of some common questions, and I'm just going to go through them one by one and just try to answer them on the fly. So let's see where this goes. All right, now the first question on the list is, what are my inspirations and my influences? Now let's just go ahead and start with inspiration. So I feel like my inspiration comes from a lot of other portrait painting artists on the internet, especially on Instagram. I have a feed that is just packed with different portrait painters. A lot of them are more abstract, a lot of them are more expressionistic. I actually keep a list of all these artists in my phone for just such an occasion when people ask me this, because I have a list that just goes on and on. And I'm just going to give you a couple highlights. One of the first artists on my list is Alex Kanevsky. He has been doing this for quite a while. He's been doing abstract portrait painting, figurative painting for quite a long time. I am just in awe of his work. So go check out Alex Kanevsky. He's a great one to look at. Christian Hook, another similar painter in this genre. He's very similar to Alex Kanevsky. If you look at their work side by side, you will see a lot of similarities, and they both are so inspiring to me, how they capture brushstrokes and a lot of expressionism. Another one, Lou Ross. Lou Ross doesn't do as much portrait painting anymore. He's more a landscape painter. For the last few years, I haven't seen him do anything in the portrait painting genre, but go check out his older work. Check out his portrait paintings. He did a lot of great portrait paintings 5, 10 years ago that I really love looking at. David Chevetz, he's a still life painter, but his use of color is amazing. Check out David Chevetz. Another artist, Jacques van der Merwe. He's from South Africa. I'm pronouncing his name, I believe, just right. But he is really amazing with doing some portrait painting that is fully abstract. He doesn't use any reference material. He just creates these portraits from his mind. Henrique Uldalen, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Jeremy Mann, Jacob Dean, Jeremy Geddes. Oh my gosh, check out Jeremy Geddes. His work is unbelievable. Johan Barrios, great work. Benjamin Bjorklund, another great artist that I follow. And the list just keeps going and going. I just wanted to give you a couple highlights as far as artists that really inspire my work. Now, as far as what inspires me outside of the actual other painters, I would say what inspires me is conveying stories of self-discovery, evolution, just how our identity shifts from the time we're born to where we are now. If you look through your life, you see a lot of evolution in who you become. And I'm so interested in all the things that happen in our lives that make us into the person we are. So, evolution. In a nutshell, I'm always interested in identity evolution. That's a big part of what inspires my work and what I'm trying to convey through my work. So that's a lot of what inspires me and influences me. The next one is, why do I paint what I paint? Well, I guess I already covered that. I love painting the human form. I find that there is a lot of emotion when you look at a face. There's something about having a face that is rested and is not showing any real emotion. It's almost like a poker face, and you have to look through that and figure out what that person is thinking. I find that to be very interesting as far as creating work like that. So all of my models, all of my subjects have this kind of emotionless feeling to their faces. And I find that creates a lot of drama. It adds some psychology to the imagery. I always have connected with this kind of subject. And one of the biggest things is I just don't get bored creating this work. I'm always trying to find new ways to create abstract elements with my portraits. And so far, I'm not bored. And as long as I'm not bored, I feel like the viewer's not bored. All right, so the next one that I get asked all the time is, what's my creative process? For me, it always starts with a model. to see if they have something unique about the way they look when they're not conveying anything, when they're not showing any emotion, when they're just at rest, as if they're at their coffee table in the morning by themselves, just contemplating something. If I can find a model that has that little glimmer of something like that in their eyes, that is the starting point for my creative process. And then it's all about the photography and the lighting. Lighting is so key for me. I love to create dramatic lighting. I think that's a big part of my process. And once that's done, once I have thousands of photos of my models, I'll just go through and just flip through a bunch of my photos, find one that just sticks out to me that day. I don't overthink it. I'll crop it in Photoshop. I'll play with the colors a little bit. When I'm painting, a lot of it initially is just a lot of technical things, trying to get everything in place, trying to get the likeness to come through. But as the likeness comes through and that's kind of set in stone or that's locked in, that's when the real creativity starts to begin, where I start to add some abstraction, which you'll see in this video towards the end. But there's a bit of everything. There's some technical aspect, there's some expressionism, there's some abstraction, and all that goes into my creative process. So the next one that I don't hear very often, but I like the question in general, is what are the challenges that you face when you're creating your artwork? What are the challenges to your practice? And I think one of the biggest ones is just finding enough time to create the artwork that I want. There's so many distractions. There's the business side, like for me, creating these videos, creating Patreon videos, posting to Instagram, all the social media, all the marketing. You find that you have to put a lot of hats on, and it takes away from the painting time that you get in a given week. I'm always trying to hit at least 30 hours of painting time every week, but there's so many other things that can distract you. So getting those distractions out of the way is probably one of the biggest challenges for me. I think the other opposite side of this is what's the most rewarding aspect to that. I think the biggest reward for me is selling a painting. I think that's the best feeling in the world. Sometimes it's also just as simple as completing a painting and sitting back, taking a look at it, especially the next day when you come in and you go, wow, yes, I am done. This is really amazing. But the sale, the whole follow through to the final sale, that's the most satisfying part for me. That's the best reward. I don't know if it's really the money aspect as much as it's just knowing that that piece of work is going to sit in somebody's room. It's going to outlive me, and there's going to be a bunch of my work throughout the world that is going to be there long after I'm gone. Knowing that really is a rewarding feeling. The next one is definitely a question I get asked all the time, and that is, what medium do you use? What techniques do you use? Those kind of things. Drawing with oil paint has been my favorite thing to do for the last 5-10 years now. I used to try acrylic. I just didn't really like acrylic. Acrylic was the biggest problem with acrylic is when you're a portrait painter. For me personally, I know there's a lot of portrait painters out there that use acrylic, but I found that the dry time just drove me absolutely crazy. I tried for a while, but it just didn't work. It didn't click. And then I switched over to oils for one painting and instantly switched to oil. So if you're trying acrylic, you've never tried oil, give oil a quick shot. As far as my technique goes, I'd say I've been honing in this technique since I started painting, but it was in the last 10 years that I really started to hone my portrait painting techniques, and I found a system that started to work for me. For a while, I was fumbling around. I didn't really have a clear path or a clear plan as far as how to approach my portraits. But over the years, I discovered that it's best for me to start with the technical aspect first, getting the actual portrait in place, and then adding my abstract, my color, all of those things on top of it. But really nothing fancy with my mediums. I'll use a 50-50 mix of stand oil and odorless mineral spirits, or I'll use linseed oil. I've used walnut oil. I've used some other things. I've tried the Galkids. I've tried a lot of different things, but I do love the Trekell brushes. Those are my favorite brushes right now. I've been using those for quite a long time. The opal brushes from Trekell are my favorites, the flats. So check those out if you want to. So that's about it for the medium and the techniques I like to use. So the next question that I get asked quite a bit is, how did you come up with your style? This is something I hear quite a bit. Really, it was just a slow evolution. Over the last 10 years, I have been developing this style. I've always known that I wanted to paint a bit looser because I used to work at architecture firms, and creating construction documents was very tedious, down to the 1/8 inch, sometimes the 1/16 of an inch. And it drove me nuts. I didn't want to deal with detail anymore. So I knew I wanted to paint looser. I wanted to enjoy painting. So I didn't want to paint hyperreal. I knew I wanted to paint with more of an impressionistic style to it. So that was the basis of it. And initially, I probably did try to go a little bit too detailed, a little bit too sharp with my edges, things like that. But over time, I started to paint with more painterly brush strokes. I started to get the palette knife out and throw some blobs of paint on. But over the last, I'd say 3 or 4 years, I've started to explore color more and a different way of abstracting the face. So the color, the extra abstraction that's happening, those are things that are a bit newer, but still, it's been a gradual process of evolving. And I think that's how it works with a lot of artists. Some are great at just jumping from one thing to another and are amazing at just coming up with a whole new body of work that is just a big jump from their previous work. And I'm always amazed by those painters. But for me, I just like to evolve gradually. So this final one that I want to talk about is something I hear quite a bit, and that is, what would you tell a painter in general if they're just getting started? And I think one of the first things that I would give for advice is start with the foundational elements of your practice. That means color mixing. I would say color mixing above all else needs to be understood. You have to understand how to create your own colors. You can't rely on the paint that comes straight out of the tube. If you can't figure out how to replicate a color that you see with your own eyes, then you're going to have some difficulty. So start at the foundation, learn how to mix paint. I can't stress this enough. Now, it took me a long time to get that warm, fuzzy feeling like, oh my gosh, I can find any single color possible with these 10 colors on my palette. I've been using the same 10, 11 colors now for about 10 years. It's just become as natural as walking for me to look at a color and know how to find that on my palette. So start there. That's a great place to start. If you want to be a portrait painter, make sure that you know how to freehand draw. You must know how to freehand draw. If the only way you've ever drawn a portrait is by tracing or using grids or guides or using some sort of projection screen, that is not the right way to start as a portrait painter. You need to learn how to draw. So find as many tutorials as you can online. I have a bunch of these on my Patreon account, but there's a lot of other places, even on YouTube, where you can get some help on learning how to see the subject for what it is. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Try a bunch of them. If you already have a natural instinct to draw, then you already have a leg up, but keep practicing. The one thing I would say is don't go too long without honing your skills. When I've gone 2 weeks, I'm on vacation and I come back, I can tell I've lost some of my skill. So it takes a couple paintings to get the flow back, to get that feel of the paint under your brush. All right, well, that was about it. If you have any other questions, I'd love to hear them in the comments. I'm sure I missed something. So thanks again for checking out another one of these videos. If you want to learn more about my painting process, go over to my Patreon page, a lot of tutorials, art downloads, all that good stuff. Like, subscribe to my YouTube channel. That would be awesome as well. Thank you once again, all you art geeks out there. I will talk to you again very soon.